And Scott had posed a question at the dinner. He posed the question, if you had to deploy $300 million into the Arctic, and if you had to get 20% returns, and would there be projects? I sat in that dinner. I didn't stand up, I didn't raise my hand, but I thought about it, and I had done that in my career previous to the question. And he inspired me to create PT Capital. That was really the light switch that started it. He was the first guy to invest into our company. He brought dozens of other investors with him, and he took a chance on a guy from a town of 4,000 people in Western Alaska that, has been there for thousands of years, but pretty hard place to get to. So what did I learn from him initially? He was brilliant. He was a brilliant man. He could see around a corner when others couldn't. He could see the Arctic as an emerging market when others couldn't see that. If I fast forward 10 years, the other piece of it that I learned, which was this very intimidating big guy, is his kindness and his heart. His heart was as big as him, probably bigger. Last time I was with him was October 14th, 2022. We were at the Holste House, which is the Reagan-Gorbachev building. And at that meeting, Scott was announcing a big effort. And he made a couple statements that I screenshot. So one of the statements he made at that, and I just found a great picture, or I kind of remember that day very vividly. It was a day like today, it was sunny, it was cold. And he said, quote, "I want to help guide the economic development based on the people of the Arctic and ensure peace and prosperity." Peace and prosperity. I remember he said you can't have one without the other. You can't have peace in the Arctic without prosperity. And we're very emphatic about that. In addition to that, he made the statement, we cannot impose our business and culture and ideas on people in the Arctic. You can't impose your business and your culture and your ideas on the people in the Arctic. So it's with that, and then my good friend Mead texted me something to say. He essentially said Scott Miner told him early on that his goal was to leave a legacy in the Arctic as an emerging market. Well, it's 10 years later since he asked me that question, 300 million. And we are at 300 million, and it wouldn't have been possible without him. And so, as President Grimson said, we did have big plans. We had big plans to continue and keep going. And we're gonna do that. We're gonna do it in honor of him. We're gonna do it because of him. We're gonna do it because it's the right thing to do. It'll be likely a little bit harder without him. Let's just say a lot harder. It's gonna take all your help in this Arctic Circle to do it. But in honor of Scott, let's get to work.
This reminds me a little bit of the Grateful Dead song that said, "What a long, strange trip this has been." President Grimson and I met about 11 years ago or so, and began this journey together. I realized that the work I've done is largely in the area of economic development. And prosperity depends upon responsible economic development. But I also realized that it takes more than economic development to have prosperity. It takes peace. Because you cannot have true prosperity without security and peace. And so, with the melting sea ice of the Arctic, the rapid changes in geopolitics today, the Arctic Ocean will become a sea of blue water, which will be threatened by the interest of the great powers of the earth. Because who will make sure that the policies that are established for the security of the Arctic are determined by the people of the Arctic? And so my vision is twofold. One is to help guide economic development in a responsible way based upon the will of the peoples of the Arctic, and to help secure the peace of the Arctic, which is necessary to have true prosperity. When I look at the Arctic, when I look at the business opportunities of the Arctic, I see an opportunity for investors like me to do well by doing good, by taking and leading the world to a responsible development of the Arctic, by getting the investment in place today for the infrastructure which will allow us to safely navigate the future, to protect the environment, and to advance the causes and rights of the indigenous nations. I think that working in the coming years on a sort of a master plan or a roadmap for the Arctic by the Arctic peoples, in addition to working to develop the institutions which will be necessary to finance this, both public and private or together, is probably the leading challenge that people like me have today. Let us not let the objective of reaching perfection stand in the way of obtaining the excellent. For it is time for us to move, and we must move quickly. By the faithfulness and grace of the Almighty, we cannot fail, and by His provision, we must rely to succeed. And so we shall walk together in this endeavor and join hands and hope that we may look back in history and we will say that this was a pivotal moment, and that it was at this time that mankind stood up and took responsibility and created a new future for the Arctic.
What a vision, what a force. It's a great loss for all of us. So can I ask you to please rise and for 30 seconds or so think about the message.